John Lennon and Paul McCartney composed the bulk of the Beatles' music, leaving behind a discography that any artist would be envious of. It didn't matter if the songs were written mostly by one of them or by a collaboration. All of them were credited to Lennon-McCartney when they were in the Beatles. Both John and Paul acknowledged that this motivated them to write the finest songs they could, but it also led to some competition between them. When asked about the inspiration for A Hard Day's Night, John said in an interview with Playboy from 1980 that he and Paul had a friendly rivalry over who would get the A-side, or the most hits. If you notice, in the early days, the majority of singles, in the movies and everything, were mine. In the early period, I'm dominating the group. He went on, the reason Paul sang on A Hard Day's Night, in the bridge, is because I couldn't reach the notes. Not that they ever made it public when they were in the band, but Paul did acknowledge in 2018 that he and John had a rivalry. I thought we were competing, absolutely, he said in an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes. Not directly, but we did eventually come clean. Replying to John's impersonation, Paul said, "Yeah, so Paul's written a good one there. I better get going." And I would similarly say, "That's a bit good, right?" He continued. "Now we're going, please." Just as he's remembering his own Liverpool neighborhood, I'll remember mine. If he had written Strawberry Fields, I would have written Penny Lane. The question of whether John had ever praised Paul on his signwriting was posed to him in that interview. No more than once in his entire life, he replied. I think it's Revolver. It was here, there, and everywhere. It was one of my songs on it. But John sort of just said, when it finishes, "That's a really good song, I love that song." Yes, he likes it, Paul replied as his response. Even now, I can still recall it. It's very pitiful. Nonetheless, Paul seemed to treat John with more kindness. He said, "Yeah, I would tell him his stuff was great," when asked whether he would compliment his bandmates' writing. It helped, but generally you'd have to be slightly inebriated. Paul penned Here, There, and Everywhere in June 1966 while waiting for John to awaken at his Surrey home. I began strumming in E, he recounted, sitting on a sun lounger near the pool. We went inside to finish it up after I had a few chords. By the time he woke up, I had probably already composed the song.